Plan on flying? In order to board domestic flights, your driver's license or state-issued ID must be a real ID. Learn how to get your real ID today at tsa.gov/realid or visit your local DMV.
Hello, and welcome to the Realm of Unknown. My name is Shane, and I shall be your guide along this strange adventure into a world all its own, filled to the brim with wonders and mysteries. A podcast that focuses on all things paranormal and supernatural. Join me, your host, each week as we dive deep into unique stories and legends about the unexplained and strange from all around the globe. You can find Realm of Unknown on all your favorite podcast listening platforms such as Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, and more. So come join us and take part in our next journey into the Realm of Unknown.
Hello, I'm your host, Paige, and you're listening to Reverie True Crime. I want to start off this episode with a statement by Claire Crossan, the lead for domestic abuse and stalking in the North Yorkshire Police Force. Quote, "Domestic abuse against men isn't often talked about, and whilst there are fewer reported incidents where the victim is male, this doesn't mean it's not happening. Men may not want to report it due to any stigma they feel, or simply may not want to believe that they are victims. And this is why it's so important that family, friends, and colleagues stay vigilant for any signs of abuse. So often, we find individuals may fail to recognize or struggle to come to terms with the fact that they are being abused. Support networks can play a vital role in helping them to understand this and to find help. The Domestic Violence Disclosure Scheme, also known as Clare's Law, which came into force in 2014, gives any member of the public the right to ask the police if their partner may pose a risk to them. This scheme also allows a member of the public to make an inquiry into the partner of a close friend or family member. Any information which is found as a result of the request will not be disclosed to anyone except the person in the relationship. If you are worried about a friend or family member and they are struggling to ask for help, you can make a Clare's Law inquiry on their behalf, or you can contact the police by calling 101. You can also contact the Independent Domestic Abuse Service, IDAS, by calling 03-000-110-110. IDAS also has a live chat service on the website, which is open 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Monday to Friday. Josie's story is incredibly powerful, and her courage in sharing the horrendous experience she and her family have gone through cannot be underestimated. If her story means that just 1 or 2 people get the help they need, then it will be worthwhile. But I very much hope that it reaches many millions more." End quote. Today's episode is about Simon Gilchrist from York, England, the signs of abuse he was suffering, and his tragic death at the hands of his fiancée, Caroline Mawhood. Let's begin. When Simon Gilchrist and Caroline Mawhood met in 2002, they were instantly best friends, and their platonic relationship very quickly turned romantic. At the time, Caroline was pregnant by someone else, but that didn't bother Simon one bit. He even went to her prenatal classes. The two were in a whirlwind romance and moved in together instantly. Caroline seemed like a sweet enough girl, and Simon was head over heels for her, madly in love. His parents and friends wouldn't see him much, but they figured since this was a budding relationship and Simon was so caught up in this new romance that it was normal. However, when he would see his family or friends, his phone was constantly going off. It was Caroline. When Caroline would ring his phone off the hook, his friends, not knowing any better, would make comments like, "Oh, she's got you right where she wants you," or "she's got you under her thumb." On one occasion, Simon visited his parents, and his mother saw marks on his face, and she instantly felt troubled and uneasy. Her heart sank to her stomach. Anytime she would ask him about marks she would see on him, he would casually brush it off, and sometimes she would ask, "Are you sure?" To which Simon would get really defensive. After the birth of Caroline's first child, which wasn't biologically Simon's, she quickly became pregnant with his child. After the birth of Simon's biological baby, Simon's mom, Josie, would go to their flat every other day after she finished work to do their laundry and prepare food for them. Usually, Caroline would go out and Simon would stay home with the babies. His mother would ask him, "What about you?" For Simon's 23rd birthday in May of 2004, his mother gifted him with money since he had recently been talking about buying tools to work with at his new job, which he loved, and he strived to excel there. The money never went towards buying himself new tools. He used that money to buy Caroline a football shirt. Around this time, he made plans with his two best friends to go watch a football game together, which he hadn't done with them in quite some time. Josie said Simon asked her to babysit, and she was curious as to why, because Caroline would be at home. However, Caroline was now going with Simon and his friends to the game. Simon's mother babysat the children because she knew that if she didn't, Simon wouldn't get to see his friends at all. Soon, Simon's family and friends would see even less of him than before. His mother especially knew something was amiss. The glow that he once had was gone. Even though he had just started working a full-time job as a fiber optic engineer, which he loved doing, he adored his boss and co-workers, and he never really showed that anything was wrong. But his mother knew something was off. She just didn't know what. Simon worked full-time, and when he could, he would sleep during his lunch break so he could prepare to feed his newborn during the night. Simon's mother said that him not acting like himself was more than the fact that he was working full-time and had two small children, but she just couldn't put her finger on it. Eventually, Caroline always felt as if someone was doing her wrong. Someone was always to blame for being unkind to her. She would say that her neighbors, who were an elderly couple, were terrible to her. Her complaints were never ending, and she was always the victim in any situation, and always seemed paranoid. One Christmas, Simon bought his mother a pair of Piglet slippers, knowing how much she loves Piglet from Winnie the Pooh. But Caroline had to have the same Piglet slippers, which gave Simon's mother a really strange feeling. Josie went to visit her son and Caroline one day. When she arrived in front of the couple's door, there was blood covering the pavement. In that moment, she didn't think anything of it, but hindsight is 20/20. Simon's mother had a new job, and when she finished her first day, getting home around 6 in the afternoon on July 26, 2004, she and Simon talked on the phone, chatting about her new job and what Simon was doing. Caroline was not at home. She'd often go out, and this was another evening that Simon was spending at home, taking care of the children. At the time, he was cleaning out the oven while Caroline was out with friends. His mother told him to make sure he was able to rest and to put his feet up. Unfortunately, that would be the last time she would hear Simon's voice again. Simon's mother received a phone call around 11:45 that night, and when she answered it, it was her daughter-in-law saying that she received a weird phone call from someone who lived near Simon to tell her there was an ambulance at his flat. Immediately, Josie called the hospital and they told her to contact the police. It didn't click in her mind as to what that meant. She was simply going through the motions until the police told her that someone would come to her home to speak with her. She began repeating a Bible verse in her head and woke her husband. Police arrived shortly after and they told her Simon had died. They didn't even tell them how he passed away. Josie began to scream and break down, making heartbreaking shrieks and cries that her husband recalled sounding like a wild animal. She called her daughter-in-law, told her the news, and said to wake up Simon's brother because they were coming over. When they arrived, Simon's brother had gone into shock. He was in the fetal position on the couch. Not long after that, Simon's parents made a beeline for the hospital, but when they got there, the police told them they could not see Simon, and his mother could not even hug him for the last time. They were finally told what happened that night. While Caroline was out that evening, she had attacked a random woman unprovoked while at a pub, punching and slapping the woman, then pulling her hair. Caroline had consumed 8 double Bacardis and Coke. She was so intoxicated she could barely walk and her speech was slurred. Before she had even went to the pub, she had been drinking a lot of wine and she was on antidepressants. When she got home, she lashed out at Simon in a drunken rage. She grabbed a kitchen knife and began stabbing him. Simon was able to leave the house, with her following behind with the knife, and he was able to call for an ambulance. Tragically, he passed away in transit to the hospital. Caroline had stabbed him between his ribs, through his heart, and pierced his liver. Simon never spoke out about the abuse that he endured. His mother said, quote, "Men don't tend to speak out about it, and we don't see it. We don't think about a man being controlled or beaten by a woman, especially when Simon was well built and she was very slight in build. I know my Simon was a victim of domestic abuse." 21-year-old Caroline Mawhood pleaded not guilty to murder, even claiming Simon attacked her. Nevertheless, she was found guilty following her trial at Leeds Crown Court and has been locked away for life. Josie stated to Jenny Hayward of Newsweek.com, quote, "I do feel justice was served because she was guilty of murdering Simon, and she had to be punished for that. But the relief did not last long because straight away she wanted to appeal the conviction. It was around a year later that she withdrew her appeal, so I couldn't even have Simon's belongings until then. I didn't really start to grieve until after that. Then I had to go to court to get access to my grandchildren, which took more time and took it out of me as well. My main focus was then on seeing Simon's children and getting a new job, because I couldn't work for criminal lawyers and be detached like before. I suffered from PTSD, and that still rears its head. You go through many, many traumas, and it takes all your strength to keep upright. And you work harder, so people feel comfortable with you, because they don't know what to say. The reason I have spoken up now is because in November of 2021, I attended a meeting about victims of domestic abuse. Part of that meeting was a really good presentation, but I remember thinking, where is the man's story and the man's voice? After the event, I spoke to a police inspector and asked this question, explaining that my son was a victim of domestic abuse and violence and was murdered. The inspector told me that they struggled to get men to speak out. Domestic violence is difficult to speak about anyway, but a man going into work and saying to their mates that they are struggling about any situation is less common. I asked the police if they had thought about sharing a domestic abuse story of a man through a mother's voice. I hoped that if I shared my story and Simon's voice, it might reach out to mothers, grandmothers, friends, or work colleagues so they actually know that this does happen. If we don't do something, it's just going to go on, and there will be more victims. Because the children are victims too. Simon's children have a mom in prison and a dad who has been murdered. They have to carry that. That's why I started on this journey. In another article, she stated, quote, "It's difficult to talk about domestic abuse, whether you're a woman or a man, because the person you're talking about is someone that you still deeply love. Especially for a man, things tend to be joked about. Oh, you're under the thumb, mate, or she's got you right where she wants you. That's why I'm speaking out, and why we all have to speak out. Look for the signs, and if you're worried, talk about it. It may cause a bit of a row, but if that's all it causes and they are kept safe as a result, it's worth it. We all have to do something and make sure no other family has to go through what we've been through." End quote. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I was asked to cover Simon's story, and it's usually told by his mother, so I will have all of those links in the show notes for you all to go and read. I'll also have national and international hotlines in the show notes for you guys, so if you or someone you know needs that, it will be in the show notes for you. Thank you again for listening, and until next time, please everybody, stay safe and take care.